Hello and welcome to the next edition of The Portal, a doorway through which you get access to state-of-the-art knowledge, to state-of-the-art competencies, and to information that you would have to seek far and wide to get. Today we have a very interesting guest with us and an even more interesting topic. The topic, just as a teaser, is the core of leadership, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. To speak on this, I have with me Dr. Madana Kumar, and he is a PhD in business administration with a very specific, very unique subject matter. Dr. Madana Kumar is a veteran in the industry. He's over 4 decades of experience. He's worked with a wide variety of companies in the commercial corporate sector. He's worked with educational institutions. He's worked with NGOs. He's currently responsible for leadership development in all its facets in UST Global. And he's been, in his mind, his charter has been to drive a specific kind of leadership in the organizations that he associates himself with. He's a man who is extremely literate, and I'm not saying this out of nothing. He's got a dual bachelor's degree, and he finally tops it up with his PhD in servant leadership. A PhD in servant leadership. And just when you think he's done it all, he starts up his own company called Leadine. Sir, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. It's a privilege to be able to talk to you today on this topic. I'm going to start with the title, right? So we're saying the core of leadership, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Does it mean that the core does not necessarily change over time?
Thank you, Bhaskar. So it's my pleasure to be here, talking to you and giving my thoughts on this particular topic. Yes. So when we talk about the core of leadership, the core of leadership remains the same. Mm-hmm. What leadership is, that doesn't change, right? I go by this simplest definition of leadership is influence. Right?
Okay.
And you look at any spectrum of leaders, right? Mahatma Gandhi to Kim and Jong, or Mother Teresa to Osama bin Laden, or Hitler to Martin Luther King, or Nelson Mandela to Stalin, or whatever. You look at any extreme, you will realize that what they do is influence. Right? Now, how they do it and what purpose they do it obviously varies, right? Okay. And that's what changes. But ultimately, what leadership is influence, right? And that's what really makes. I think it's also important because that might be the reason why your audience should be interested in this topic, because by that definition, everybody is a leader.
Absolutely. Right? I was just going to ask you that. I mean, I'm a leader. A person sitting at the front desk is a leader in that context, because we all have to influence somebody or the other.
Yeah.
But I think I get what you're saying, right? At the end of the day, our job is to influence our colleagues, our stakeholders, and so on. And what you're saying is that is truly the core of leadership. How you do it could change based on the context, based on the kind of person you are.
That's correct. Yeah. That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
That's a lovely segue into my next question. Is this context today different from, for example, the start of the Industrial Revolution? Are we not living in a different context? And whilst the core may be the same, do I have to change the how?
Absolutely. We have to. In the caveman days, leadership only meant, protecting the clan and providing food, right? Yeah. Go out, hunt, and get stuff for the people to survive, right? So, yes, because of that, the change is constant, and because of that, how we approach leadership has to change. You refer to the Industrial Revolution. It is interesting, Henry Ford, the father of the automobile revolution, and he's known for many good quotes.
Correct.
But I always quote one of his infamous quotes, and one of his infamous quotes is that, look, why do I always end up with a whole person when all I need is somebody to work on my shop floor? It's two hands to work on my shop floor. And that used to be the approach to to people and employees before probably 1970s.
Yes.
Right? They were considered as hired hands. Right? Yeah. So, but that approach had to change as people understood what they are, their values, and all that stuff. And and then moved into what we today call, what people used to call it as human resources. And I always have a tiff with my HR colleagues on this, because ultimately
you're still saying resource.
Yeah, you say I love you and all that stuff, but then you're still a resource. Ultimately a resource.
Oh, I have a bigger problem. Our finance colleagues still call us liabilities. Right? So,
exactly, right? Cost center.
Right? So this I get, but in the context today, right, that all of us are living in, business is so dynamic, right? It is changing almost on a monthly basis. Does that impact the style of leadership that we must bring to the table? Is that so important? Or is it about the kind of people that we have to lead that is forcing a change in the kind of leadership? Is it our customers that are doing this? Regulations that are doing? Where do you see the context today impacting the style of leadership that we must bring to the table?
Right. Now, it's a very interesting question. Obviously, there is an ecosystem around us that influences, that makes us do certain things and stuff like that. And I always say that that a behavior of a leader, or behavior of any person for that matter, is a function of the person and the situation.
Fair enough.
Right? Yeah. And the situation is all this what you have talked about. The stock market pressure, the regulatory pressure, the customer pressure, and all that stuff. And all of us know that we can't change the situation. We can't change the situation. But what we can be in control of is the way we behave, right? Is the way we behave, and especially behave towards people.
Okay.
And that should be the focus of leaders, right? So immaterial of what the situations changes, how can we regulate our behavior in a manner that brings down to the other party that you talked about, is to look at the people and say that, look, my behavior towards the people, how does it make them feel?
So you're saying it's more about me as a leader than about the context in which I'm working?
Absolutely. And again, I repeat, we cannot influence the situations so much.
Correct. Right? I agree.
Actually, in some cases, we can't do anything about the situation. They're just there. Right?
Yeah. You're right. It's like gravity, right? You don't jump out of a plane without a parachute. Right? So it's a constraint. The situation is the constraint for us. On the other hand, we also hear very many pushback, especially from senior people saying, hey, this is who I am, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Is that going to work?
Well, I mean, the sad part of it is that there are examples of corporate leaders who make that work, right? So if you say, does that work? I mean, I would say that there are times when it will work. What the problem with that is, it does not, it does not leave a legacy. It does not leave a continuity in leadership and stuff like that. So ultimately what happens is, it's a question of what do I want to choose? Do I want to choose to be self-centered and to be focused on myself and and then say what you just now said, or do I want to leave a legacy when I when I move on, so that there are other people who are willing to take on the leadership and continue the process that I have built in, right? I think that's what makes the difference between what I call as the good, bad, and the ugly of leadership. Right?
I agree.
So I mean, all said and done, Kim and Jong still exist.
Absolutely.
So
you're saying, hey, you know what? Anybody can run and perhaps even build an organization, right? And they can bring the kind of leadership that you like or don't like, etc. But to build an institution takes a different approach. And there you're saying it's more about the way you relate to people that you work with. Right?
That's correct. Yeah.
How do I do this? It seems to be an easy mantra, and personally also I struggle a lot with it, right? I work with so many diverse people, and you're asking me, Bhaskaran, please change your approach to every individual. I'll go crazy, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think the first and foremost is to begin with the belief that that investing in people is the right investment.
Okay.
And when you invest in people, they will bring you organizational results. So in other words, you need not worry about the organizational results when you take care of the people. Actually, Ken Blanchard even goes to the extent of saying that profit is an applause that you get when you take care of your people.
Absolutely.
And then there are several organizations who believe in that and who have practiced that and been successful, right? And I have studied almost the entire list of the Fortune 100 best companies to work for.
Okay.
And and then what I have found is that almost 1/3 of them adopt this principle where they say that, look, people are my first priority. And the organizational results become a byproduct.
Right. Absolutely.
When I invest in people, I know that they will help me achieve my organizational results.
Okay. And this is, I've obviously read similar things. Even in the Indian context, we have many companies who say customers come second. It's my people that come first, and they're very successful, right? So no doubt about it. If to do this, to really perform this role effectively, what kinds of competencies will I have to build for myself? I have to build some kind of leadership competencies, and we'll maybe come into that in a little more detail. Do I have to work on my functional area? Do I have to understand just people? What's your take on this? What do I have to do?
So I categorize, let me call it virtues. Okay? There are two types of virtues that I talk about, and I encourage people to strive for.
Yeah.
The first type of virtue is what I call as the resume virtues.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
What are the resume virtues? What do you put in your resume? That your skills that you have, certification that you have undergone, whether you are a generative AI expert or whatever else it is and stuff like that, right? And your functional knowledge. You are an expert in BFSI or insurance or healthcare or whatever, right? So you put in your skills and expertise in that resume thing, and that's necessary. That's your starting point. But the second category of, that's where it gets interesting. The second category of virtue is what I call as the eulogy virtues.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. That's a good one. Okay.
You know what a eulogy is, right? It is what people say about you when you are no more, when you're dead and gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you have left the organization.
Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Let's make it less morose.
That hurts less. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So that is what I call as the virtues which leave a legacy, and those virtues are all related with people.
Absolutely.
Those virtues are all related with
that
people.
rings a very, very strong bell with folks. If you took anything away from today's talk, it is this: your resume carries a version of you. Your eulogy carries a different version of you. Are the two the same? And then that becomes a very powerful story for yourself. Amazing. I'm going to quote this over and over again, right?
Thank you.
I'm now going to deep dive into your doctorateship, your PhD on servant leadership. And in a sense, and I know you've spoken a lot about it, I've had the privilege of listening to you over and over again, it seems oxymoronic. Right? You are either a leader or you are a server, quote unquote server, right? Now you're bringing the two together. It seems to be an artificial marriage. What is this concept of servant leadership?
Right. Yeah, it is. You are absolutely right. It is oxymoronic, right? People will always say, look, how can you be a servant and a leader. At the same time? And several, and I have, as part of my studies during my PhD and post my PhD, I've come across almost about 26 different myths that surround this whole concept of servant leadership. Right? And my effort has been to break those. When in the organizations that I work in or I consult in, is to break that oxymoronic nature. But the simplest way to put it is like this. Servant leadership has got two parts to it, right? There is a leadership part.
Correct.
And it is the leadership part where the leader is responsible for setting the organization's vision, mission, values, objectives, goals, and all that stuff. So the
direction for the organization.
Yeah, the direction for the organization. And at that time, of course, the leader takes the inputs from the group or whatever it is, but it is the leader's responsibility. Now, once the leader sets that, the vision, mission, values, goals, all that boundaries and the direction that the organization needs to take, what does the leader do? Now, if you keep the traditional pyramid like this, the leader will always be at the top.
Yes.
So setting the vision, they are at the top.
Correct.
And what happens is traditionally, even after setting the vision, they remain at the top and they continue to run the day-to-day operations.
Correct.
And when they continue to run the day-to-day operation, what happens is something interesting. What people do is, people are always answerable to
the leader. Yes.
And with the ultimate result that the customers get left out because they are at the bottom. Who are you working to please? You're working to please your boss because the directions come from the top and and the accountability flows upward. That's the problem with the traditional pyramid if it stays even during this thing.
Okay.
So what servant leadership does is, after the leadership role of setting the vision, mission, values, goals, and etc., they do something called an inversion of the pyramid. So they invert the pyramid.
Okay.
So the pyramid becomes inverted. So the leader, then what happens is the leader steps down and say that, guys, I have provided the vision, I provided the direction, the values, goals, what you can do, what you cannot do, etc. Now I'm going to step down and you be responsible for the implementation. And I am here as a resource. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here as a resource. I will serve you. I will be available in case you need my help. But otherwise, you go and run the show. And I'm here as a resource for you. I'm here to serve your needs.
Is there still the traditional role of the leader even in the inverted pyramid?
The first part
I get, right? So the first part is the visioning piece, and there you can still talk about it as a regular pyramid. But at some stage, after the direction has been set, what you're advising is you become the servant, right?
Correct.
But I presume you are not implying that everybody else becomes the leader.
No, it is, in a way, everybody is a leader, but the leaders still has a leader role because in the sense that they are available, they are the ones who are, building relationship. They are the ones who are understanding, helping others to grow and succeed.
Correct.
So when you, for example, you can't just step down and say, okay, now you are.
That's abdication. That's abdication.
Exactly. So it is not about abdication, right? So you got to be constantly in the leadership role of identifying, okay, who needs help? How can I help that person grow? How can I help that person, move up the what we call the autonomy level? How can I help them to take more decisions, right? And how can I appreciate them?
Yes.
Right? How can I uplift them?
Correct.
So those are the things that the leader. So the basic thing is the leader will then start asking different questions rather than the traditional leader questions about, okay, look, what have we achieved today? What are our goals? Where did we reach? What percentage have we achieved, etc. Those things will be taken care of by the team if the leader focuses on
So the leadership is the leader's role, still influence.
Exactly.
But maybe influencing all the enablers.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yes.
He is enabling the rest of the organization to perform, making sure that they have what they need, etc. And it still does not, like I said, abdicate the leader away from. He's still responsible and accountable.
Yeah, that's right. Because the leader, even when he or she steps down, they will still say that, look, if something goes wrong, it's my responsibility. Right? If something goes wrong, it's my responsibility. I will take the responsibility. So that's how you empower, right? That's how people will feel safe, right? How do people feel safe to take risky decisions?
Absolutely.
If they know that, look,
somebody is going to take care of them.
Take care of them. Yeah, somebody is going to cover their back, as to say, right? And that is when they will take risky decisions. That is when innovation will come. That is when people will be willing to bring out more ideas to, bring out.
I hope my team is listening to this. Good. I need that. So I need to play the servant leadership role for them to get there. But bang on. Can I become a servant leader overnight?
Not overnight.
Okay.
It takes some.
So obviously I have to change my belief system and so on. I get that. Do I need a new set of competencies?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yeah, there are certain new areas of leadership that we will need to look into which we are not usually, familiar with.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I actually put it into three categories. I call it the vision, the character and relationship.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
to say,
Okay.
in our generation, this thing VCR, right?
Yeah,
The new generation will not know what
a
VCR
is.
But yes, but we know what VCR is,
yeah.
right? So vision, character, and relationship.
Okay.
So we have to build our competencies in all the three.
Okay.
Now, how does the vision differ? Vision basically for a servant leader differs in the way that it will not be self-centered it will not be self-centered. It will not be internal looking.
Okay.
Like for example, some organizations have the vision of being the number one in my field.
Yeah.
Right? Who does it serve?
Them.
Right?
Yeah.
But some organization may have the vision of having a PC in every desk.
Correct.
That is outward focus. Right? So that is one of the vision.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of vision is that it has to be something big.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It has to be something dreaming big.
Yeah.
Right? Not constrained
it
by
should be aspirational.
Yeah, it should be aspirational. Right? So that is one part of this thing. But of course, it has to be balanced with the what we call the foresight.
Correct.
Where we know what is the past experience, the present situations, and the consequences of our future actions and stuff like that. So but ultimately it needs to be this thing. Then comes the character. Okay. And that is where the eulogy virtues kick in, right? So things like what importance do you pay for integrity? Right?
Correct. Okay.
How do you treat integrity? Is integrity black and white for you, or is it 50 shades of gray where it could be adjustable category, right?
Convenience.
We live in a culture where everything is adjustable. Right? And every language has got that.
Yes.
But for a servant leader, we need to have that black and white level of integrity, right? Okay. So that we look at that. And one of the things that we teach in servant leadership, which normally is not talked about in any other leadership philosophy, is the concept called emotional healing.
Okay.
And we talk about we actually talk about 5 healing habits there. Mm-hmm. And the healing habits are, first is called FRESH, which is failing forward, resilience, and self-healing. Right?
Okay.
That is, you are. So that's the first concept, right? The second one is interesting. It is forgiveness. Right? Okay. How can you really, forgive others in a sense that that makes this thing, right? Especially
if I marry the two, self-healing is actually forgiving yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, true.
Right.
True, yeah,
so I forgive myself, and then I have the power and the authority to forgive others, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay.
It is related. Absolutely. Yeah. And then the third one is, of course, apology.
Okay.
Right? And apology is something that we normally do, but what we typically do is sometimes we trivialize the act of apology by saying, hey, it's not a big deal. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're more wrong than me, but I'm anyway sorry. Stuff like that. So there are different ways. So there is the right way of doing apology and the wrong way of doing apology. So you got to learn the right way of doing apology, right? And then, of course, the concept called pause and recharge. Right? We are all in a task-oriented life, right? One task after another.
Correct.
But unless you take time to disconnect from everything and recharge yourself, you won't be able to lead. So you have to be able to lead yourself into that area. And then the last one is again an interesting concept called grace.
Okay.
Now, I always differentiate grace by explaining what justice is. Justice is when you get what you deserve.
Correct.
Right?
Okay.
You get punished for if you do a bad thing. You get rewarded if you do a good thing. And the quantum of punishment, or the quantum of reward, or the severity of punishment is dependent on how good or bad your act is.
Yes.
That is justice, and the whole human system, society is built around that. And then comes mercy, right?
Okay.
Well, if justice says you deserve a punishment, mercy can step in and say that, look, I can spare you of the punishment. That's what the mercy petition does, right? If somebody is convicted for a death row, like the case of the Nirbhaya, rapist, right? So they're convicted for death, but they can appeal for mercy, saying that, look, we deserve this punishment. Can you spare us as a punishment? And grace is something above that. Grace is when you not only spare somebody of the punishment, but you reward that person. So I know that look.
So exactly.
I know that look.
Oh, okay. So it's like forgiveness plus.
Exactly.
Right. Yes. So not only do I forgive you, I also kind of applaud you.
I will invest time in you. I will reward you with something. Right? Yeah. So I get that look a lot of times when I talk about grace, because you cannot argue about grace based on logic.
I agree.
It's illogical.
I agree.
And it could even be termed unfair. Like, isn't it unfair to reward somebody who has done something bad?
Absolutely.
Right?
I get this.
But the fact is that we are all recipients of grace at some point or the other. Right?
Absolutely.
If our parents didn't show grace, we probably wouldn't be
here.
alive today.
We wouldn't be here.
Right?
Right? Yeah, I agree.
And then grace marks and all that.
Yeah.
So in some way or the other, we have experienced grace, and it is our responsibility to bestow that to others. Right? I mean, for example, take a simple case where somebody is not performing well. The process says you put them in a PIP and send them out.
Correct.
And that's what justice requires.
Yes.
Mercy is when you spare that person off the PIP. But a reward is really, grace is when you really say that, okay, look, this person doesn't deserve it, but I'm going to invest my time in developing that
second
person,
chance,
or
third
looking
chance,
for
etc.
another opportunities for that person, or helping that person. I'm going to personally invest in that.
Correct.
So that's what, and these are things that we can do.
Yeah.
Right.
So I agree. I completely agree.
That
was VC, and the R.
The R is where you build relationship with others, right? So what type of relationship do you build with people, right? And it should obviously be based on putting others' needs first. And that requires a lot of listening, which normally none of us
very
are
tough,
great at,
very tough.
and persuasion, right? The art of persuasion.
It comes back to influencing.
Exactly. But again, the challenge is, influencing can be done by, saying, hey, look, I'm your boss, you better do it.
I hold a gun to your head. I get that. Yeah.
Right? But persuasion is when you don't use that.
Okay.
But help that person realize what's the benefit, what's the mutual benefit, and stuff like that. And they feel that they sort of buy into it, and then they go along with you, right? That's when you put the others, put the others' need into this thing. And interestingly, when I did my PhD, I defined a servant leader as someone who invests in the life of another person to the extent that the other person becomes better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, happier, more famous than yourself. Right.
that you in your list of you must add courage somewhere. Right?
A good idea.
Yeah, it's
more courageous than yourself.
And it requires me to be far more courageous to do that.
Exactly.
Right?
That brings me to that's a good one, because a lot of people say that servant leadership is a soft leadership. It's not. It requires courage. You hit that point, because you're getting into it knowing that somebody is going to make fun of you. Somebody may even make
and somebody may make you look less competent than them, and you're still comfortable. So the self-confidence, the courage to do that.
The relationship piece, the other part on relationship piece is how do you help others grow and succeed.
Correct.
And the difference is, again, every leader will say, look, I'm interested in the development of my team, isn't it? There's no leader who would say that, look, I'm not interested in the development of my team. But if you ask the question, look, why are you interested in their development? Is it because when you invest in their development,
my numbers?
Exactly. So what I typically call as monetizable skills, right? A leader will be willing to invest in their monetizable skills. But supposing that person wants to learn photography or something, unless which is not related to their job, a developer who wants to do photography, right? Would you still be as interested, as excited to invest in that?
As gracious as.
That's what I call as the holistic development versus investment in monetizable skills. And that's something that differentiates servant leaders from other leaders.
So this is almost about growing myself. The VCR concept is about growing myself, right? Vision, character, relationships. How would you, or what focus would you give, what importance would you give to other competence areas, like my functional competence or like my business competence? These are also competencies that a leader must have any which way. Is there a hierarchy to this?
There definitely, those are required, and I would say that they are foundational.
Correct.
Right? Without them, you cannot just go and bluff your way into leadership. So you got to have that. You got to be, you got to invest in yourself to make sure that you are functionally updated. You know what the latest technological trends are, and things like that. So because, otherwise you will not be able to relate with others.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So they are absolutely essential, and I would call it as foundational.
Okay.
And I would say that you build these VCR on top of their foundational competencies.
Correct. Okay. So the foundational competencies, whether it is domain, functional, technology, etc., is kind of an entry into the game. it doesn't yet allow you to play the game.
Correct.
What you're saying is VCR is that
secret
sauce,
will
secret sauce will
differentiate.
differentiate, right?
That's right.
Now, one of the things that you hinted upon in the beginning of this conversation was many a times we are restricted by constraints.
Yeah.
And we think, the regulations don't allow this, or the customer will not allow this, competition is doing something different, etc. Now, I agree with you, right? Some of these constraints are true constraints. Right? Regulations, there's no two ways about it. Regulations are regulations. But do you think leaders also create assumed constraints for themselves?
Oh, in a big way. In a big way. My studies very clearly show that one of the reasons why people do not rise up is exactly this, exactly because of the assumed constraints, right? Susan Fowler has written a book on self-leadership and new management, and in that she explains. She tells a story of an elephant.
Okay.
Right. Basically, the story is very simple. A baby elephant is caught, and the baby elephant is tied with a small rope to a pole or whatever it is. The baby elephant tries to free himself by kicking, but it doesn't work, and ultimately the baby elephant gives up. And now the baby elephant grows into this mammoth. Right. Probably it can handle tons of weight, and it can easily kick off this thing. But studies show that the elephant, when it grows up with this constraint, will not even attempt to free himself or herself.
Will not even attempt
because it assumes that I have a constraint. I'm tied up and I cannot break that.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's an assumed constraint. So several of us believe that, look, it can't be done. Nobody will listen to my ideas. I'm just a small fry in the whole universe. And who is going to listen to me? I'm not a good talker. I'm not good at presenting. So a lot of these assumed constraints come into picture. And a lot of times it is that which prevents you from growing up the organization, growing up the ladder, taking up more responsibilities and stuff like that. So I would strongly advise, especially the youngsters who get into this, to be able to identify what are your assumed constraints. And once you're aware, then you will know how to get out of it. There are plenty of resources available out there.
I think the biggest constraint we have is our unwillingness to empower ourselves.
Yeah, true.
I can't do this. I can't do that. Exactly. I cannot do this. Exactly. So we just refuse to empower ourselves to break through those constraints. Just like this elephant does not even try to break free of the chain. Right? That's a big one. So there are assumed constraints that can prevent me from, and actually these assumed constraints can prevent me from being any kind of leader. Right? It's not just about servant leadership, but it's about everything. And it is important for us to appreciate that and break free from that. Now, many a cases I am blinded, right? The typical blind spot in this case. I don't even know I have an assumed constraint. Is there a way for me to get that?
Well, that's where, in the servant leadership competencies, one of the attributes that we encourage people to work on is what we call as awareness.
Okay.
How do we become aware of myself, especially the blind spots and things like that we talked about, right? It could be done through, one of the best ways of it is through feedback.
Okay.
Ask for feedback, or, take the feedback when it comes to you. Of course, there are higher ways of doing it through surveys, through, psychometric tools that are available nowadays and stuff like that. So I think the thing is there are a lot of resources available.
Correct.
And your colleagues and your organization team is one of the best resources that you can go to and ask for feedback, right? So improve your awareness. I think that is one thing that, and incidentally, what we do is in our training programs on servant leadership, that's one of the toolkits that we give to people. How do you become more aware? Because as you said, it's very important. And without that, you can't even
move forward. Right? I have one fundamental doubt, and as we close this conversation, one fundamental doubt. It is human for a person to be selfish.
Yeah.
And your whole philosophy of servant leadership seems to be, don't put yourself first. It's always about the other person, right? To me, this is keeping myself significant. That's an important thing for every individual. I want to succeed as well, right? There's nothing wrong with thinking like that. how does this now play out? Is it about my needs and wants versus somebody else, or should it be my needs and wants and the needs and wants of others? What is your take on this?
You brought me to one of my favorite topics called success versus significance.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Now, I mean, you go to a graduation ceremony in any university. The message is always go out and be successful.
Correct.
Right? And as you said, there's nothing wrong with being successful. But if you really look at successful people, one problem that you might find with the successful people is that they have added a lot of value to themselves. They've become richer, they've become wiser, they've become more learned. You hold a PhD, whatever. Right?
By the way, without a PhD, I've arrived. at least you have a PhD.
Good for you, because my wife calls me permanent head damage PhD. Right? Okay. So you add things to yourself.
Correct.
Right? But how about adding value to others? And that's where significance matters.
Okay.
That's where I always say, don't chase success, but pursue significance. Now, what is significant? Significance is being successful, but with the explicit objective of adding value to others. So you gain wealth so that you can help the poor.
Correct.
You gain health so that you can serve the sick.
Okay.
You gain wisdom so that you can help the foolish. You gain knowledge so that you can help the unlearned. Right, etc., etc., etc. So everything that you do is with the explicit and understood purpose, or I would say the purpose of.
So intention of giving back to somebody else in some way or the other.
Do it with that. Do it with that. So your objective of adding value, you should add value to yourself. As they say in the in the flights, you got to put your mask on first before you help others. So you got to add value to yourself. What's your motive in adding value to yourself? Is it that you become more better, you become more famous, richer, etc., or is it that you can add value to others? So when you add high value to yourself and high value to others, that's when you call significance. Contrary to when you add high value to yourself and low value to others,
at the cost of others.
Success. That is success. Not even at the cost of others. It may not be at the cost of others, but you may not be adding value to them. You may just be accumulating things for yourself, but it's not adding value to anyone else. That is what success is.
Does it mean, absolute last question, does it mean that if I want to create significance, I have to be in a journey of continuous learning?
Yeah. Continuous learning is absolutely essential. Right? Especially,
I mean, I've arrived. I'm a leader.
We never arrive.
But I'm the CEO of the place, or I'm the CXO. I'm a bit short.
Sure. But remember, things around us are changing. Right? And today the technological advancement is so much that we are already always playing catch up, isn't it?
Yes.
We're always playing catch up. You buy a new gadget, before the time you learn all the features, a new gadget has come. So we are always playing catch up. The human adaptation has certainly fallen below the technological advancement. So we are doing a catch up scene, and in that catch up scene, unless you are constantly upgrading yourself, constantly learning new things, you will become obsolete very soon, right? And you will become a failure. You will become a bottleneck for the organization, right? For the others.
That's why you say the neck of the bottle is always at the top, right? So you don't want to be that.
You got to, and there is no other way other than to continuously learn, and that's why I said, I mean, there used to be, for example, I think Thomas Friedman, who wrote this book, The World is Flat, he says that, look, there was a time when we could afford to take time off to go and learn something, right? You take time off from work or whatever it is, go to a Gurukul and learn something and come back and all that stuff. But today, when the technological advancements have far overtaken our adaptability, we don't have that luxury. We don't have that luxury. The only thing that we can do is to learn all the time. Learn all the time. Learn in the flow of work, as Josh.
So it is part of your role.
It has to be part of the work. You face a problem, you learn new way of solving the problem rather than sticking to the old ways. So that's the way you learn. So the continuous learning in the flow of work, etc., has to be the norm of the day. Unless we do that, we will become obsolete.
So folks, there you have it, right? To me, I learnt a few things. So VCR is an important concept, I think, that all of us must come to grips with. Are you the kind of person who can come up with a vision? Are you the kind of person who has the character that's required to lead the rest? And are you the person who can build relationships with everyone around you in a mutually synergistic way? Right? It's not enough. That's not enough. You must not only seek success as an individual, especially so as a leader, you must also seek significance. What are you giving back to those that are working with you? Are you making their lives better? Then you are the kind of leader that the organization deserves. And last but not least, are you on top of the game 24/7? You cannot blame the organization for not sending you for a training program or not providing a coach for you, etc. You have to be able to do this on your own all the time. And it doesn't matter what level of leadership you are in. Leadership is about influence. And you could be a first-time manager, you could be a CXO. The game is still about influence. I'd like to thank you so much for these amazing insights. As I said, it was a privilege talking to you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. I wish we had more time. We could have had a far longer conversation.
My pleasure.
Thank you.